Hello, my name is Caleb Robinson, and today I will be covering the book Way of the Warrior Kid. This book is centered around the main character Mark and how his uncle, who is a Navy SEAL, guides him to becoming a warrior kid. Along the way, we will watch Mark conquer fears, overcome challenges, and improve his confidence, ability, and fitness. Chapter 1 through 4. In Chapter 1, Mark can't wait for school to be over tomorrow because he thinks he's dumb. He is sad he can't do a pull-up in gym class, and he can't swim in school field trips. He is also nervous because his cool Navy SEAL uncle is coming to stay for the holidays, and he's scared his uncle might think he's a loser. In Chapter 2, on the last day of school, he is mocked for not being able to do a pull-up, and he goes home sad and discouraged. Chapter 3. On the second day of the holidays, they go to pick up his uncle from the airport. Later that day, Mark finds out he is sharing his room with his uncle. In Chapter 4, the next night at dinner, Uncle Jake tells stories of him and the Navy SEALs. After dinner, they go up to the room, and before they go to sleep, Mark rants to his uncle about how he thinks he's not good enough because he can't do anything his other classmates can. Uncle Jake says he will help Mark fight to become stronger and get him to overcome his fears. Chapter 5 and 6. In Chapter 5, in the morning, Mark greets Uncle Jake, and Uncle Jake explains that he got up really early at a time he likes to call 0 dark 30. Afterwards, they went on a walk, and Uncle Jake asks Mark if he knows what a warrior is and what it means to be one. Uncle Jake then says he needs to learn to fight back if he wants to be a warrior. The next morning he is woken up early, and Uncle Jake makes loud banging noises in his ear with a bin lid and broom. Uncle Jake then makes him train in the shed. He makes him do star jumps, burpees, V-ups, push-ups, and more to make him stronger. They do a time challenge, and Mark realizes how far he has to go to be as good as his Uncle Jake at exercises, as Uncle Jake beats him by about 90 in every single exercise. You will only get stronger if you put your body through training, Uncle Jake says. The next day, after another brutal morning of training, Uncle Jake says that there is still a lot more he needs to accomplish and understand before he can become a warrior. So Uncle Jake gives Mark an old 3-ring binder that has the words Warrior Codes written on the front. Inside the book he finds the SEAL Codes, the Viking Laws, the Ranger Creeds, the United States Marine Corps core values, the Code of Chivalry for Knights of the Middle Ages, and more. In the book he reads important values and codes like loyalty to teammate and country, serve with honor and integrity on and off the battlefield, ready to lead, ready to follow, ready to never quit, take responsibility for your actions and the actions of your teammates, excel as a warrior through discipline and innovation, train for war, fight to win, and defeat our nation's enemies, and earn your trident every day as long as a lot of others. Chapter 8. The next morning, Uncle Jake and Mark wake up again very early at 0 dark 30, and he says as long as he wakes up, Uncle Jake doesn't have to bang the loud bin in his ears. Uncle Jake told him to try pull-ups, but he couldn't, so Uncle Jake told him to do something called negatives, where you pull yourself above the bar and slowly let yourself down. This works on the same things that pull-up works on, but it's easier to do, and if you do it enough, you'll be able to do pull-ups easily. Chapter 9. In this chapter, Uncle Jake gets Mark to use math to solve a question about how much water each warrior needs to carry on a mission. He got him to figure out what cliques are and taught him about radios and nautical miles. Afterwards, Uncle Jake started to teach Mark the 8 times tables, and he managed to pick it up pretty fast. In this chapter, he learned a valuable lesson about rationing and about math. Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is Mark's first jiu-jitsu class, and they took him to an MMA gym. The MMA gym had a second level where the class was. He managed to pick it up in the class pretty well, and he quickly learned. They did some drills and some exercises, and he learned that you must be humble to opponents in and out of battle. Chapter 11. In Chapter 11, they went down to the lake, and Uncle Jake started to go into the water. He dove under the water and stayed there for a while, which freaked Mark out. And he came up a little while later and showed Mark that he learned how to swim himself. so he could teach Mark, who didn't know how to swim. The day they started was just putting their heads under the water and wading into the tide, but that was enough. Chapter 12. Mark didn't get up in time this day, so Uncle Jake woke him up with the bins clanging in his ears again. Uncle Jake then explained that you need discipline, and you need to wake up, you need to train, and you need to go to all your classes and study hard if you want freedom. Chapter 13. Today in the morning of Chapter 13, they did the average parts of the workout like the push-ups, sit-ups, V-ups, star jumps, and everything else. After multiple days of just doing negatives, Mark decided he was ready to try a pull-up. When he gave it a go, he got 4 pull-ups and Uncle Jake was proud of him, so he let Mark have 2 days off training. On the rest day, when Uncle saw Mark watching TV, he challenged him to a math card game. He aced all the questions, so they decided to try a timed attempt, and Mark got through all the cards in 6 minutes. But they were going to try for 4 minutes, so next time that he will have to do better. Afterwards, Uncle Jake gave the stopwatch he used to Mark so he could practice in his own time. Chapter 15. Today was Jiu-Jitsu day, and when he arrived, Mark started on the average things like exercises and drills. Then the instructor called Mark over and told him to spar with the new kid. The new kid, called Jaden, rushed at Mark straight away, and Mark dove under his arms and tackled him to the floor, almost instantly getting him in an arm lock and making him tap out. This made him realize that he needed to be calm and collected while fighting. This was Mark's first tap out too, and it made him very pleased. As they sat down for dinner the next night, Mark walked to the fridge and grabbed himself some junk food and sat down with it. Uncle Jake frowned and told him he needed to feed himself healthily with protein and fiber so he can grow. So he threw the junk food in the bin and he got himself a plate of chicken dinner his mum cooked. Chapter 17. Today they went to the lake for a swim day, which happens every other day. They started with the basics, like dunking their heads under the water and wading into the tide. Then Uncle Jake said it was time for Mark to swim to the other side and back, after the other few days he had been learning some doggy paddles. The first swim to the other bank, Uncle Mark came with him, and then Uncle Mark left him on the other bank alone to swim back by himself, as he was fine swimming with Uncle Jake, and it was just a matter of overcoming his fear. With a little encouragement from Uncle Jake yelling on the other side, he swam back on his own and completed 2/3 of his goal of eventually jumping off the big bridge by the end of summer. Chapter 18. In the next chapter, Uncle Jake explains that the body will adapt to be able to withstand stress it's being put through, so he must do something to break through this, which Uncle Jake likes to call a plateau. This plateau can be broken by training harder or going through one big load of hard continuous work that puts an obvious strain on the body. They started the morning with the usual exercises like push-ups, burpees and negatives and a few pull-ups. Then after, Uncle Jake said it was time for Mark to break his plateau. Uncle Jake made Mark do 100 pull-ups to break his plateau. Afterwards, he got a 2-day break for his efforts. Chapter 19. Uncle Jake is persistent about Mark learning all the capitals, states, and presidents of America, including the Gettysburg Address. Uncle Jake teaches Mark a technique called trailblazing, so he can remember everything. This works by memorizing it as one big piece of information instead of trying to focus on each individual name or state, which causes you to forget things. Using trailblazing, he was soon able to remember 10 names, then 25 names, then all the names of the presidents. After learning trailblazing, it was easy for Mark to learn the states and the Gettysburg Address. Like other days, he started his jiu-jitsu today with some drills, rolling with other teammates, until the new kid arrived. Mark was asked to roll with the new kid. When he started, they circled around each other for a while because Mark feared the kid's size. Then Mark realized that the kid didn't have any experience, so he dove in and pushed the kid down into mount. He easily got an arm lock. This made him realize it wasn't always about size or power. It's more about technique that matters. Today they warmed up with the average swimming at the lake. And then Uncle Jake said that he thought Mark was ready to jump off the bridge. Mark was scared too, so he tried to play it off, but Uncle Mark ran up to the bridge and jumped. He was fine after, and it looked fun, but he was still scared. Then Uncle Jake said that fear lived in the moment, and afterwards he would feel great. So he went up the bridge and stood on the edge for a little while, and after a little encouragement from the ground, and he jumped off and he thought it was awesome. So they spent a few hours doing that and had a great day of fun. Chapter 22. After the bridge, Uncle Jake made Mark rest for 2 days. After the 2 days were up, they went back to training in the mornings. For the first morning, they did the usual workouts. Then Uncle Jake said, "Do one pull-up." So he did. Then Uncle Jake said do it again, and before he knew it, he had done his 10th pull-up, which was a milestone he was aiming to complete earlier in the few chapters. Although he had already done 100 pull-ups, that was to break a plateau, and this was an actual reward. Finally, in chapter 23, the day came where Uncle Jake had to go, and Mark thanked Uncle Jake for all the amazing lessons he had left him with. Before he went, Uncle Jake said, "You know what to do. You know what you need to do to stay on the warrior path. Hard work, discipline, study, eat good food, keep your room and your gear in order, set new goals, and work hard to meet them. Keep training jiu-jitsu." They drove him to the airport and said goodbye. Mark's first day back in Year 6 went well. He was more confident, he was fitter, and he knew almost all the times tables. He aced his timed multiplication test in math, and then next period in PE he aced the fitness baseline test, where he got 14 pull-ups, only 2 shy from the strongest kid in the school. At recess, he finally stood up to the bully who didn't let anybody on the play equipment, and for the first time in ages, kids could finally use the play equipment without having to worry about the bully. Afterwards, the bully walked away sad. Mark came over to the bully and said that now the play equipment's for everyone, and that he could come use it too. About 2 weeks later, Mark sent a letter to Uncle Jake talking about how thanks to his training, he could swim in school trips, stand up to the bully confidently, ace the math time test, and get a high score on the fitness test. The note also mentioned how some kids had taken a noticing to Mark's improvement, and he had given them tips and helped them with their math. Finally, he drew his warrior kid symbol on the letter and sent it off to Uncle Jake, dropping it off at the post office to be sent to Uncle. At the end of the book. By the end of the book, Mark had learned lots of lessons and dominated many challenges, such as beating his fear of swimming, becoming multiple times better at math, learning how to do pull-ups and get good at exercises, standing up to the bully, finally jumping off the bridge and overcoming his scaredness, and finally understanding the way of the warrior and the fact that freedom equals discipline.